that what we found out was that although parents clamored for it at the time, they were too busy. And at the time, I didn't get it. I wasn't a parent yet. When I became a parent, all of a sudden, all of that research made so much more sense. And that's a whole other interesting aspect of it. Is like there's the building for a user group that you don't actually know. And then once you become a part of that user group and realizing how much of those tie in, and you're like, oh, you get so much more empathy for like, why didn't you want to use this product? Oh, because you have no sleep and you only have 5 minutes to maybe check the news because the news right now is scary and I can't play the news in front of my child. I mean, how wild is that? So it's a lot of what I've learned is that going back to being humble, be empathetic, and try to think way beyond yourself and try to put yourself into like their testing shoes.
Welcome to the / where we lean into the future of IT. Today we have a special guest, Ocean Eiler, who is a designer based out of Washington, D.C., who has gained recognition for his comprehensive approach to design and sound, based on a core philosophy that everything is design. Currently, he is an associate director of design and sound for PBS Kids, where he has been for the last 17 years. Among his notable achievements are his contributions to PBS Kids Go, Cart Kingdom, which is a massively multiplayer online experience, the PBS Kids Talk About video series, which was awarded a Daytime Emmy in 2021, and the PBS Kids Brand IDs, which were nominated for a Children's and Family Emmy in 2023. In parallel to his day job for PBS Kids, he also hosts 2 separate live streams. The first is a 3-hour live stream on Twitch. The second is a half-hour showcase on Eaton Radio. Both shows are called From the Annex and focus on jungle drum and bass music. And I've given some of his tracks a listen, and they are phenomenal. So definitely look those up. As always, I'm here also with my beautiful co-host, James Carmen.
Hello.
And welcome, Ocean.
Yeah, thank you. I've never met anyone in my life named Ocean. Have you ever met another Ocean like in your travels?
I have. I've met a few of them. And comically, if I had to like put a percentage on them, most of them are women. So there you go.
I just want to go to a bakery with them so that I can have cake by the ocean.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
See, that is, you've set the bar high. Dad jokes are on. Okay, get them on.
Oh, wow. That's a good one, Aaron. That's good.
I love the puzzled look that I got when I was like, "What?"
Yeah, that's what you look for. Like, where you have
that
to
was
explain the.
Yeah, it was like real you nice and slow, and bam.
That was well done.
Smacked right in the face with the dad joke. See, you got to get the lean in and then the whack.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Yes, the man, the myth, the bad influence dad.
There you go. Cheers. It's my mug.
Yep.
I think it was a Father's Day present last year. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was like a figurative, like what did the 5 fingers say to the face type joke there. That's what that one was.
There you go.
Smack.
Smack. Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. We're off to a great start.
Yes.
This is what I would love to. I mean, this I've really enjoyed. We've been talking to Ocean for already an hour, right? We started our recording like an hour ago. We've been talking about all kinds of cool stuff. So this has been a real trip, and it's been a joy. Hopefully, we sprinkle some of those conversations in some of the topics for sure.
Yeah, and to bring back up one of the topics we were talking about was this DIY attribute of development of that we think isn't necessarily like being phased out. Like we were talking about back in the early days of development, the tools weren't there, things weren't there, so we had to create our own, kind of like, George Lucas had to do with the original Star Wars, right? The special effects stuff wasn't there, so they had to create it. Um, and you know, the beginning aspects of web development were the same way. Tools weren't there. We had to roll our own and figure things out. DIY isn't gone. It's just evolved into something different, right? The DIY space, because even in the backend languages, like early days of C++, you had to roll your own containers for storing data. Like you had to create your own collection. You had to create the array. You had to create a set. You had to in those types of things, and even a string. You had to create your own string class, and because those things didn't exist, and but everybody knew about them. Like I had textbooks that said, "Oh yeah, here's how you write your string class," and you just go and have to do it. So here's like your DIY instructions for creating your collections, and it was like, okay, great. So I'm going to spend a week and a half writing my collection, so then I can start writing my application type of thing. Um, and it was the Wild West. I remember on the website, it was like, okay, how do we integrate this thing and make it visible on a web page? And the wildest one I ever had is like, okay, we want to generate pie graphs in real time off of data that's coming in. So we're monitoring data and we're going to do pie graphs, and we want those to be real time. So we had to figure out, okay, well, here's the information. We can get the information easy enough. We can do all the math. That's easy enough. But how are we going to generate this graphic that's going to change on a regular basis? So at the time it was, okay, every time you load the page, you get new data. So here's the data, generate them. We ended up going to R, which is a statistical language that's used in labs and stuff like that, because they had a way of generating the pie graphs, and sent that to the data. So integrated with R, brought it back in, and populated the page with R-based pie graphs, and it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It was like, now you don't do that. It's like, oh, well, I don't have a library to do that, so that's not possible. It was like, no.
But that's a really interesting point, though. Is like, there's so much of, we didn't know what wasn't possible, and the reason why it wasn't possible yet is because someone hadn't done it yet. But that didn't deter anyone. It was now all of a sudden, that's the next level. That's the boss fight. And that's where like communities were born. That's where like online libraries were like started up, especially for me, like working in Macromedia and Flash, like things like Flash dens and like, chat rooms that were like dedicated to like people that were trying to resolve the problem, but then also make it modular enough and be able to speak to it that then you could teach someone else how to do it. And that was how I learned how to comment on coding, was so that I could then, add to the community, and so it was like, and then being able to speak and talk to the language is what I was doing enough, then helped me turn around and talk to the developers as I began to give up more of that responsibility as more talented people came about, but then also turn around and be client side and talk about what is and isn't possible right now, but then also be like, we could do R&D, we could build it out, anything's really possible. How much money are you willing to spend to make it happen? And like, that's an interesting ethos that I don't see as much, but I'm also not, as I've aged, I'm now hiring people. I'm not necessarily in deep with those communities, still hearing the chatter. And I miss that. I miss the raw energy of like having a problem that hasn't been solved yet and putting really talented minds on it and all being in the same room and spitballing things. I mean, that's half the fun of like my back end of knowing how to code, but really focusing on design, which is why I got the dual degrees. it allowed me to have both language models to talk. So when I'm talking to a client, when I'm talking to dev, and striking that balance, I mean, especially in the early 90s, I mean, websites were atrocious back then. So it was like, my whole thing was like, I'm going to go get a design degree and I'm going to do web design and I'm going to put them all together and make beautiful websites and people are going to shower me with money. You know, yeah, it didn't happen, but still, good idea.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that aspect of the. It's not that it's unsolvable; it's how much money you want to spend at it. We can figure it out. How much do you want to spend on it? Because, and I've actually talked to this in other groups as like lunch and learns and things like that. It's like there's no problem that's unsolvable. Like if you want to have like 100% VR, you know, type of environment that we do this in, we can do that. It is, but it's going to cost you because it's going to take the time and research and working with the different things and the testing and that kind of thing to be able to make this available to your audience. Mm-hmm. And when you spin it that way, it puts it in perspective that they understand. It's like, okay, it's not that you're saying no because you can't do it. You're saying no because it's inhibitive from a cost perspective.
And then the thing to look at is that if you keep running into this similar sort of thing, does your company put in the R&D to do it and then turn around and make that a feature?
Right.
You know, and now it's like, okay, we've seen that this is a thing. Now we're going to build it out. Now we're going to charge you for it retrospectively, you know, but not as heavily of a cost, if you will, because multiple people need it. But yeah, no, it's all fun. And then you add to that a nonprofit status, and then nonprofit status with a legacy, and particularly a legacy of being trusted by parents, you know, and being a safe space for kids. And it's like, okay, we still have things that we can do. We have things that we want to do. And we have insanely talented people that could do the work too. But it's like, is that where we're going to put our money? Is that where we're going to put our time? Are we going to write a grant for that? You know, because we have this idea that will be mutually beneficial for the entire country's, you know, youth. But we don't have the money to do it off the get. And the station that we're working with, or the interest group that we're working with, and by interest group, I'm usually talking about teachers, parents and teachers. You know, they don't have the extra money to do it. I mean, they're strapped already. And so it's like, okay, let's go out and let's find the grants. Let's find the federal dollars, the private dollars, the donors that, you know, can allow us to then turn around and create the product that America's youth needs, I guess, you know, or that we want to provide to them. You know, those are all sorts of fun, like different aspects of an ethos that a lot of us grew up in, which was that DIY, we can do it. And I think that's the fun part about my community and the people I work with. There's rarely a no, it's more of a win. We can't do that now. Put it in the bucket list. Now, sometimes we light the bucket list on fire and just say, okay, we're starting again. There are too many things in there, you know, or we pull it back out and we go, the need has been created by someone else. Okay, cool. You know, let's go use that product. Does it still do what we needed, or are we still needing a custom solution? And that's a whole nother story, which we could get some really talented PBS back-end people to come talk to you, and you could run down rabbit holes for decades on the stuff that we haven't made and the stuff that we want to make. But
yeah, and I know, James, you end up talking a lot about the build it versus buy it type of paradox. So it's like, okay, which is going to be better? If we buy it, what do we get? If we build it, you know, how much it's going to cost us over the buy it solution and customizing it to fit our needs.
Yeah, and some of that comes down to business mission. Like, is this our core business? Is this a true differentiator for us? Those sort of decisions. You got to think very hard about that when you're running a business, because you can do all sorts of things, as you said, Aaron, with technology. I mean, you got enough money, you can do. Sky's the limit. You can do anything, but do you want to make that investment? Sometimes it makes sense to disrupt or to be the innovator in your field. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes it doesn't. Do you feel like that's diminishing over time? Have we lost that? Or is it just a different DIY now? Just like it just builds on the thing before, like, okay, everybody can make home movies now. What's next? What's the new echelon that we need to get? So maybe we can talk through that.
I can't wait, because I'm ready to dive in on that one hard.
Well, and it relates to technology too, because we get to a certain level where it's like we kind of plateau for a little bit, and we're like, okay, we finally figured that out, and now what's the next big thing? Is it quantum?
You can even tie it in with AI.
Yeah.
It was like,
that's a question. Like, are we losing that DIY, kind of ethos? I think we were talking about that. It was we were very much built like that, and I don't know if that's an American thing or if that's just the where we were raised. Like, have we lost that? Is it gone from our society now, or is it just different and not the same that we grew up with?
And I'm gonna counter and say that it's, or not even counter. I'm gonna inject and say that it is different. And I think a little bit, when I'm thinking in particular of on a programming end of it, so much of it we've already answered so many problems. We've answered all the basics, right? And so we're no longer having to build things from scratch. You don't have that initial HTML page and it's just fully blank. You can already start populating it right off the get. And I think in that I'm going to keep point. Oh, my ADD's kicking in already. Because we're not building it in off the get, sometimes it's not as easy to be like, I've assembled all these pieces already. Now I'm going to inject my own code into it. Or I'm going to take it, I'm going to modify it, I'm going to build it into actually what I really need. And so there's a laziness that can be there. But what I'm seeing now in particular on deeper creative ends of it, like when we're making videos, when we're making audio, and even now in some cases code, and especially on back-end code, as we're reimagining, okay, you can do this with the CMS. What are our limitations, and then how far can we push those limitations to break it? And those are all interesting aspects. But I recently toured a middle school, high school here in Washington, D.C., and I was watching kids building videos in front of green screens for a project in particular. And it was just kind of like this, like, oh, okay, you've got access to tech that I couldn't even dream about, like in middle school and high school, but this is your starting point now. So much like on the programming end of it, it's like, here's your starting point. And it's more of opening the door more and allowing people to then inject and add on top, give you those flourishes that your basic, plug and play doesn't have. And I'm going to jump to a reference of an artificial intelligence podcast you guys put together not too long ago. And you're talking about, I think it was music at the time, like making music, and how that, I think in the Control-Delete segment of it, you're like, okay, like maybe it can get a pass. And because of making music and being a music producer myself, I will use it to get my mind moving on a topic. It is my blank piece of paper that I'm just starting. I'm throwing things in, and I'm just trying to see if I pull inspiration, and then I'll take that, remove it. Maybe I'll even inject it back in and have it edit and do other things to it. But in particular, for my end of music making, my ability to go in and say, I need a Motown drummer, and I want 30 seconds with a drum solo, go, and it will output a series of different versions of Motown drummers. And I could be more specific than that, but Motown drummer at the moment. And then I turn around and I add it to my MPC and I start chopping that up. And now I have free samples of someone that sounds like a proper drummer. The only problem is those audio samples or those clips are absolute garbage, like fidelity wise. So again, it's a really good scratch point for me to start with, to then replace and add on and embellish. And so I think the ethos isn't gone. I think it's there. It's just changed in different ways than we've ever seen it. So, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, we developers, as you were talking, like my mind is racing. Us developers, we have a tendency to, that not invented here, I think is the way people will describe it a lot of times. So there may be something like, oh, there's a library for that. Oh, yeah. But I want to write that. Some of those things are kind of fun, right? So that's still there. But we would hope that, you're building on the abstraction of like, okay, we've already solved that problem. We know how to, deliver web responses. Like, there's a library for that sort of thing. But some people still have that kind of like, I just want to open the hood and write it on my own. Like, maybe you tried it years ago and you're like, I want a rematch, right? Like I want to try to tackle that problem again. So there's that rematch aspect. But it can be hard sometimes to even let that abstraction layer, like to make that leap to the next, that plateau, I guess. I don't know what's behind that. Is it, it's easy, it's familiar. And then, because once you get past that plateau and you put the abstraction on top of it and say, okay, everything below this line is settled. I'm going to build technology on top of this and not worry about the stuff below this line anymore. That's the new frontier, right? That's the scary, that's the leap. So I don't know. I think we as developers tend to we drop below that line because it's kind of fun to do that stuff. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think too, also one of the things that some of these different tools and starting points, I like that. That concept of it resets your starting point. It's kind of like now you have a head start. Because there's a quote from David Eiler, who's an author, that the most terrifying thing in my life is a blank sheet of paper. So if you're starting with absolutely nothing, it can be just in with the song reference, it's kind of like I have no idea where to start. It's like, okay, I have this kind of loose idea floating around in my head on what I want, but I have no idea where to start. And so having a starting point that kind of nudges you in a direction, whether it be AI or a sick track, that it's like, oh man, I really love that beat and that rhythm, but I want to adjust this, right? And it's kind of this is like in that DJ space and I love hearing like DJs like Live Mix because they're free flowing. And that free flow is kind of like where I would love to get in development, to where I don't have to think about the code as much or the syntax or tying piece A to piece B, but really flow through a problem set and just kind of free flow solutioning on this difficult problem that I'm trying to tackle. Right?
It's interesting that you bring up the flow state, because and you also reference DJs on that. And so I'm going to caveat on a point, though, that a really good DJ will have done their homework, will have that full solid baseline, especially now that we've become digital and it's less tactile, which in some ways removes a certain level of physical writing, not in the sense of like pen and paper, but as in like I pull a record from behind me and my mind has every instance that I've ever played that record, maybe when I bought that, all those memories attached with a visual image. You don't necessarily get that on a screen with a little bit of text written across the front of it. And so now as a digital DJ, we've got all sorts of different tools that can tell us the BPM, the harmonic key. We can even like I've got my stuff cataloged comically using emojis, but it makes it in a visual reference, so I can very quickly look at a page and go, okay, that track is vocal. That track has lots of Jamaican references in it. That track sounds like a robot, whatever it is. Like there's a subgenre in drum and bass called neurofunk, and it sounds like an angry modem. And right now, it's fairly popular. It's also known as jump up. And jump up from the 90s versus jump up now, people in the comments will say things. Anyway, I know they're two separate things, but I've got all those things keyed in such a way. And so last Monday, where I was doing a fundraiser for a friend who lost everything in the hurricane, right? And so we're raising money, and I didn't feel like playing high energy music. And so I went with my emojis, saxophone, bass guitar, and something that looks like sparkly stars. So sparkly stars are like more airy sounds. It's a little bit more laid back, a little bit more lounge. The saxophone is definitely like as many jazz samples as I can put into it. And then the bass guitar for me means funk and nostalgic, because I'm a child of the 70s, and like that bass, that sound of a bass has a real deep resonance for me. And so I put all that into a playlist and then just said, go. I organized it by harmonic key and BPM, and I made a 3-hour set on the fly, because it's sure not what I was originally going to play vinyl all night. And then, this came up, the mood changed. It'd be the same as like you get onto a dance floor and the dance floor is just on fire, and you've brought nothing but down tempo like lounge tracks, and you got to switch gears real quick. But what I'm saying is that like that comes with like hours of back end work to be into that flow state that you could just go, okay, let's go. Just like a skateboard will do hours of attempting a trick. And so that when they come to a new terrain, they've got all that mental mapping to then do the thing. And so when you're, as a coder, you're facing a problem and you go, oh, I've done that millions of times before. Maybe I can grab this piece here and I can throw it in as my baseline to get it started. And then I'm going to add on top of it, because I know that that particular module of code has flaws, has weaknesses. Maybe I'll update it and I'll throw it into like a repository somewhere else for someone else to download. But, and it's all about that flow state.
Yeah, and one of those things that we use as coders in that is this concept of patterns. And patterns have gotten, they go through like some bad press, and there's like, oh no, don't use patterns, they're the devil, blah blah blah. And but that's that tool. It's like if you understand the pattern well enough to know where it should be applied and what problems it fixes, you can flow on that and say, oh, I can use a factory pattern here and it'll be a little bit cleaner, it'll work a little bit better, and I'll be able to extend it out in this direction where I'm going to need to next month when we do this other feature. Right? So you do your homework on your patterns, you know how to use them, you practice them in the backyard, right? And then when it comes time to show, it's like boom, I put it in, and I put it in the right context. And that's where patterns get a bad name, is misuse and overuse, right? It's like, I know how to do a singleton pattern, so I use it everywhere. It's like, oh.
But yet those basic patterns, like we do it in the same design. It's your iFlow. It's like, all right, I'm starting at the top of the page and I'm working down. And like, does that look like a button? Does that not look like a button? There have become mental cues for us to realize, what is the largest thing on the page that we need to pay attention to, and then work down accordingly. There are very classic maps, visual mappings, like, are you building a triangle? Is it an inverted triangle? How is your eye flowing down the page? You can build something that the main point of that you want people to go to is at the bottom of the page, but then you have to structure everything down to that point. And now with, every mobile device under the sun, you also have to think about how that is going to shift as your design becomes more liquid. And it's like, how's it going to look on that weird little folding, Android phone when it does the fold? Is it going to look okay still? And we've got this joke at PBS about the eye pole. It's this like massive yard long iPhone. And it's like, our designs have to look good in that. And if we can make it look good in that, and at landscape. Okay, cool. The design has passed the test. Now, mind you, that's a running gag, and we've made it into a comic, like a little comic illustration that every once in a while will come out with. But recently we had a device that was already in a landscape mode. We already, because of the PBS Kids homepage, we've got this circular arc right at the front door, and it's got all the characters in it, and kids can like rotate. It kind of looks like an old rotary phone in that regard, right? But when we do a takeover, we have to put everything around that. Now take it and squeeze it to the smallest imaginable height, and we call that the neck pillow, right? Because if we're working around the arch, we have to make sure that our designs will work in that. And so it's like it, and there are all sorts of patterns that we've already developed and created through user testing. And user testing, we do so much of it that we know that, okay, the eye flow will work in such a way that we can drive the child to content to be like, hey, here's a brand new show. You should come try it out. But we don't get in the way of the child that just wants Daniel Tiger. And they're going to go right to Daniel Tiger no matter what. It doesn't matter how shiny, how beautiful like my designs are. Nope, Daniel Tiger, that's it, done.
Yep.
And who doesn't want Daniel Tiger? I mean, let's be honest.
I mean, Daniel Tiger's parents have taught me more about parenting than I care to shake a stick at. So, I mean, like, good on them. Like, Papa, Mama Tiger, big ups.
Yeah.
So I know in design, iconography is really big, at least for the adults. How important is it in the kids space to like introduce kind of the common iconography that we use in design as for like an adult experience?
It is, I mean, it's foundational because these kids can't read at this point. And so, well, to start, the lowest end of our demographic cannot read. I mean, 2 years old, if you're reading at 2, man, good on you. But it's like 2 to 8 is our sweet spot. And then we do kind of tend to float up olders. We might get into the 10s, but really at the 10s, we're cutting off pretty hard. They've gone on to bigger and better things. And then depending on the household and family, sometimes we'll also get some of the youngers. But in the main front, 2 to 8 is our main sweet spot. And making sure that not only is the iconography clear and can be read at any size, but also that we're pairing it with something that will immediately, you'll get the jump as to what it is. And sometimes it might be a little bit of alluring. It's like, is it a game? Is it video? And I mean, thanks to Netflix, I mean, that little triangle, I mean, everyone knows what that is. And you could even say that really iTunes had kind of said before that, and the VCR before that, and, go down the line. But it's, building those in and then like figuring out which controller is going to resonate with a child. When I first started, a joystick would, but joysticks no longer mean anything. And now it's like, it's more of a PlayStation, Xbox style controller that has become more of the default,
And this has become the save icon.
Yeah, right? I was about to say, how in the world did the floppy disk like keep its reign as the save icon forever and ever?
Yeah, and for those of you playing along at home, I actually have what I now call my 3D save icon, which is a 3.5-inch floppy, which is what it used to be. It was the symbol of a disk because you were saving it to disk, and at the time, this is what you would save it to. And I still have a huge library of them, and I pulled one out, and somebody goes, "Isn't that a save icon?" Do you 3D print that? I'm like,
yeah, 3D printed.
Wow, that's amazing. I think the reason that it survived is because it is clearly recognizable as a tiny square. And, as a designer, if it works, if it reads, I'm not going to change that. But it is amazing that particular artifact has survived so many years. I mean, think about it. Like, there were jumps from it went from that, it went to the zip drives. It went to the quad drives. Now it's USB sticks. But putting a little USB stick as a tiny rectangle won't be nearly as readable. You might be able to get away with it. Sorry, I'm going to pull one out just for reference. You might be able to get away with by just using the part that you insert in, but that's not nearly as visually iconic as the floppy disk.
I do have one interface that I use that uses a thumb drive icon for being able to access the USB stick, but it's more of like a file explorer reference, not a save. So, and that was, instead of using like the USB symbol like I've seen in certain interfaces, like if you're going to read something from USB or utilize a USB, it's got the little USB symbol on it, and you click on that. So I thought that was an interesting design choice on their part. The other one that is got a physical artifact behind it that's an old reference is the print icon. It's a dot matrix printer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has a printer that spits out paper out of the top anymore, right?
But that sound is so iconic.
Ink.
But it's also the best tactile experience is ripping the edges.
Oh,
I used to do that for my dad all the time. Would just sit there and casually just rip the edges for him.
Yep. It was the beginnings of ASMR, right? It was sitting there.
We might need an appendix for like when we publish this to like explain. Okay, VCR, that is a video cassette recorder, and we had magnetic tapes that were wound up inside these little boxes. And,
right. Yeah, 3.5-inch floppy was how we used to save data on old computer systems.
You never wanted to get it anywhere near a magnet.
Oh my gosh, no. Magnets.
Actually,
or slide the door open and touch the disc. Don't touch the inside.
One of my first jobs outside of university, I was living in Geneva, Switzerland, and every night I had to back up the server, which was on magnetic tape. I'd make 2 copies, and I'd put one in a safe, and I'd take one in my pocket, and I'd take it home. So kids, before there was the cloud, there was magnetic tape.
Oh, and it was so slow. So slow. Because I remember having to do tape backups and rotating the tapes, because you usually had like, a 3 to 5 set of tapes. And then every now and then you'd have to replace them because they would wear out over time.
Yep.
Oh, God. All right, so you've mentioned like, designing for kids and all of that stuff. I'm just curious, like, pretty much all the kids growing up these days are their first tech experience is usually going to be an iPad, right? Some sort of a touch-based interface. How does that change the nature of design? Is it, do you think, are we at the point where we kind of have to start from that point and that's how we have to design because they've all grown up that way? Or are we getting there? Like, where are we at on that? Or is that even a thing?
I don't know if it's necessarily a thing. I think it was a huge innovation move forward. I mean, when I just started at PBS when the iPhone came out, and so the initial ripples of that weren't really visible until a couple years later. And what we very quickly watched in testing was kids trying to zoom in on paper testing. So they'd reach down and they'd touch the image on the paper and try to zoom in on it. I was like, oh, okay. But all of a sudden it allowed for far more exploration. And so kids natively, they are explorers and they are very tactile explorers. And so conforming them to a mouse, and if they had a trackpad, that was even better, but really conforming them to a mouse, especially one with a scroll wheel and a secondary click that may or may not help them get anywhere, I was impressed that they were able to do what they were able to do back then. But of course, they're quick learners. They're little sponges. It's amazing. But then you give them a tactile experience, especially now that it's got some haptic feedback to it. And it's a whole nother world for learning. We have our ability to drive children to a learning topic and to give them feedback on what they're doing is right or wrong, or, I mean, to say pleasurable is not the right word. It's like, we've given them the incentive to say that, like, okay, you're building your matrix of success in this game. You are learning these learning blocks along the way. In the end, here's the payload of, whatever, great learning initiative we have at the time for that particular game. I think it's only beneficial, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm curious to see how things like artificial intelligence, virtual reality will play in, but that all comes with questions about brain development and when to introduce that, especially as children in our 2 to 8, the brain development of that time period. Sorry, I've gotten a little off track, but the brain development that happens within that time period is monumental. I mean, you've gone from a child that is just learning to fill and dump to reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's like that sort of jump is insane. I mean, the synapses alone that have been built and rewired over and over again is impressive. And so I think it's only going to be built upon that. And when it's the thing that we need to figure out and navigate as a society is when to inject all of those things into our child's daily, life. Now, I'm going to make a quick caveat here. I'm speaking for myself. I don't get to speak for PBS. I'm not a spokesperson for them, but I work for them. Cheers.
It's
Disclaimer.
Funny you mentioned the haptics, and this is a technology podcast, but that's very important. How do we let our users interface with what the solutions we're building? It reminded me just recently of a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you got to play this game Astrobot," and I'm like, "Okay, the new PS5, like not the intro one that they gave you years ago with the PS5." But he's like, "You should see this thing." So of course I dropped $60-$70 and went and bought this thing. He was talking about. And I got to see it. What he was talking about, he was explaining the game. He's like, I was watching my daughter play this game, and there's a spot where like the robot like kind of takes his hand across the wall, and she just pushes in on this brick. And he's like, how did you know to do that? How do you know to do that? And it's haptics. It's in the controller. And as he was taking his hand across the wall, one brick, when you put your hand on it, vibrated a different way. To me, when I got to that point in the game, it was almost imperceptible. But she just like, that's the one. Yep, press this one. And we're like they're attuned to that. Like, and I'm I'm almost 50, so yeah, it was weird.
The matrix of success that they'd built up. It's like they've given you little hints along the way that might have been haptic and audio. It might have been even a heavier haptic response, to begin, and then they might dial it back. But that's kind of actually how I fell into doing audio for PBS Kids, was that we needed sounds to go along with the visuals, and we needed sounds that were on brand. And they also just had a need at the time, and I raised my hand and said yes. I mean, if I look at my entire career journey for a brief moment, it's because I raised my hand and said yes. Now, was I qualified to do all the things? No. Did I do a lot of learning along the way? Yeah. And each project I did molded, what I am now in that regard. But then going back to the haptics and sound, like those are the different ways that we need to engage with our youth that can't read yet, that may not necessarily understand, so it's like you give them a pleasing sound. You give them a pleasing sound that for PBS is more of an organic nature. We don't have too many robotic sounds, too many things that are like overloaded synths, although I love me some synths. I'm just going to say that. But, it's really could a child go out and make that same sound? That's what I'm constantly trying to strive for. So when you're on the OTT, the Apple TV device, and you're scrolling through, right? It's a wood block playing the PBS Kids theme song. No matter which way you go in the grid, it'll play the PBS Kids theme song and give you a little bit of a shake on your stick, letting you know you're doing the right thing. You're going along. It's all good. And those are the fun problems that we get to solve. And it's I have one of the cooler jobs that I think most people have, in that, like, I get asked to do a lot of things that I may not be qualified to do. But on the other hand, I've got a strong enough team behind me, and I've got enough historical knowledge and that DIY ethos that I'm just like, yeah, sure, let's go do it. Like, heck yeah, we're going to go do the thing, and we're going to figure it out. I mean, the first time I did video recording for PBS Kids, it was in an old office, hanging a sleeping bag off the ceiling so it could deaden all the sound in the room, and then just hung a mic in the middle. It was very cheap. But it was because that's what we had. We didn't have a budget, but we needed new voiceovers because we had new shows that were coming up. We had someone in the office that could do the talent, and it was okay, let's go. And then someone along the way also said, like, hey, we need some music to go along with this. I'm like, I could do that. And I jumped in, I did it. And then somewhere along the way, they offered to buy me a license to Ableton Live, which is like my DAW of choice. And then somewhere along the line, I became the director of design and sound. And so, hey, not too shabby.
So I'd like to circle back a little bit. You were talking about kids like trying to zoom in on paper, and I imagine that was probably from some user testing, and which just baffles my mind because one of the famous quotes is "Never work with kids or animals," and user testing with kids seems like one of those things that could be amazingly enjoyable or completely frustrating. How's that experience been for you, user testing with kids?
Column A and column B. When I first started, I told you the story previous, but I'll tell it again because I love it. If anyone's ever heard me talk, I think I tell it in every story. I think it was like week 2 on the job, maybe it might have been a month. Time might have flown. I was working on the PBS Kids video player. Now, this is like early days of YouTube. We were trying to create a place that was safe for children to watch video clips, because at the time we couldn't provide a full clip yet. I'm not sure if that was licensing or just technology, but we couldn't. Anyway, so I built this video player. It's meant for the older audience of PBS Kids Go. My first tester's in. I'm front row. I'm right behind the glass mirror. I've got my boss on one side, my boss's boss on the other side. Now I'm just like, this is my first day. It felt like that. It was like my first day. I'm all excited. And the child goes, this sucks. And it was soul crushing to me. Just like, and I immediately went into the classic problem solver mode. Okay, cool. I'm going to get in. I'm going to fix it on the fly. Like, and I'm taking notes, but also coding at the same time. And my boss, Chris Bishop, bless his heart, comes up behind me, puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, it's just the first child. It's okay. There are more to come. And that, oh, totally. But kids are the best at finding bugs and the best at noticing the one thing you don't want them to notice, whatever that might be. Whether or not it was a poorly rendered version of Daniel Tiger in the background, whether, it's like, oh, that doesn't look right, or a bug that you already know exists and they will immediately find it no matter what it is, because they're the original button smashers, and so that if you don't have clean, simple design and clean code, they will crash your system and stop. And I love that about them. And now that we've, after COVID, we've kind of gotten more into this virtual testing scenario, which has actually broadened our testing bed, which has been amazing. And we've come up with some great kind of DIY ways that parents can either like hold a phone, put a phone so that we can also see what they're doing. whether or not that's on the computer or whether or not that's on a tablet. And the part that's actually the hardest is to get the parents to not inject and try to support their child and just let them explore. Silence is key. Like when they're really thinking about a topic and the room just goes quiet and you don't see the mouse moving yet, and all you can see is the screen because you can't see the kid at that point, it's the best because it's where are they going to land first. There's this game that you played in the Midwest. It was like, cow bingo. Where's the cow going to, leave the payload within like a square chunk? It was like things you did at like fairs.
Yeah, the county fair.
It's kind of like that, and we're like, which graphic is he going to choose first? So, I don't know. It's all exciting in that regard.
Yeah, I tell you, man, and we talked about this, I think, the other day, but I don't know that I could do your job. I think if a kid came in and was like, this sucks, I would have gone full Ace Ventura mode, like, yeah, and you're ugly. You know what I mean? Like that. I think that's what my response would have been. I probably don't have the maturity for your job. Thank goodness I do what I do.
It's constantly humbling. And I think that's the part that right around the time I think I take myself too seriously, I walk into playtesting and I go, you know what? I'm making beautiful graphics and beautiful interfaces for children to learn. Mm-hmm. And they are the most persnickety client I've ever run into, but man, they're cute.
Yes, that's kind of a defense mechanism for them, right? That yeah, it's kind of it's interesting because you bring up like the parents jumping in and kind of helping them and kind of polluting your feedback, that, if you will, I guess is kind of, I'm paraphrasing, you didn't say that, but
yeah,
the same thing happens, I think, for us as even with adults, right? So we have to stop ourselves from like jumping in and like, well, just click over here, right? Like that, but no, don't. You want to know, can they do it intuitively without you guiding them? So it's hard for us as watching people, using your software to like shut up and let them do it and learn. You learn more in silence than you do with helping, guiding them, right?
And I mean, you could take that to so many levels, but especially for me, as I've kind of aged into management, the biggest thing that I've taken away is that not only am I listening more and actively trying to listen more, but also not form responses initially. And so I'm very actively just like taking it all in and then giving an account and be like, okay, cool. Now let's give you some thoughtful questions to ask. Why is usually the thing. I mean, why is much like any child. We're always asking why so that we can get to the core of it. Especially as a designer who is trying to read people's minds. I'm constantly sitting there being like, okay, we've got this design problem. You want this thing, what color do you want it to be? What, whatever those aspects may be. And it's like, you have to extrapolate and ask why and ask why and ask why, so that by the time you're done, you've collected enough information and then ruminated with them and done that critical thinking part that we all worry that we're losing. But you do that critical thinking part, and then you can be their hands to create whatever they need. And that's the big part about being a designer, is like, very rarely do you get to design your own stuff. You're always working for someone else. And I love that aspect of it, because it's like that, the puzzle pieces, the challenge is you're trying to solve a problem, but you're also not trying to pollute it with what you think it is. Because the moment you inject that, you may not be actually solving their problem. You might be solving your problem.
Yeah. I mean, you learn, like my kids, my own children, like you learn so much about yourself working with them, right? And, mm-hmm. and have there been any lessons like that as you're working with kids? Because they're pure, right? They're unadulterated, right? Their brains are not polluted with all of the pessimism that we grow into with age. is there anything you've learned about yourself as you're working with these kids and you're like, oh man, I really look at that the completely wrong way, or in a just a negative Nancy kind of way, whereas they look at it very positively. Anything like that?
Oh, totally. And I mean, as a parent, I run into it a lot. It's a constant conversation within my own house. I mean, I grew up on the more extreme sports ends of it, and so I'm definitely injecting that into my daughter. And I remember the first time she bombed a hill, and I'm like proud father, like walking behind her, and got my wife next to me, and my wife is like, "I'm so thankful she can't see my face." And I realized that right there in that moment, we had the two extremes. She's terrified that, at any moment she's going to crash and burn on the skateboard. And I'm just like over the moon because she's like taken all the fundamentals that we've been working on for years and is just now like hucking down a hill and power sliding into a corner. And I'm just like, yes, that's great. And I didn't say, oh no, and so it's when I've got kids now that are testing my product and they take a feature that was fundamental for a product in a blog, comments, okay? In our online MMO Car Kingdom, our users figured out that the best way to get in contact with us and to get in contact with one another was through the blog comment section. And so, much like old school message boards, they would log on to the latest blog post that we'd put out. And we had like this whole elaborate story. There was a reporter that would like go out and like check on the community and would like take pictures of people in the community, and like there would be events and all that. And sometimes the kids reacted to it. Oftentimes they did, but they would also list out the clubs that they had created and the different server shards that they would be on. And so they would set up events and be like, okay, like Sparkle Pony 42, we're all going to meet up in like shard number 3 at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then they would list all the members of that party. And it was just like, there was this whole nother world of like communication, and they were like chatting back and forth. And if they would see someone that was an admin that was in the game, they would be commenting, oh, I saw so-and-so over in the deep, or like someone was over in Grand Glade and, Chris Bishop showed up. Oh my goodness. And like, we were like mini rock stars, right? And this is the first time I'm at that point in time, I've been at PBS now for 17 years. We sunset that project a couple of years ago. So like first time in my first 12 years that I had almost daily interaction with our user group in that regard. Now, was I messaging them directly? No, but I could see the output of that. And it was amazing, these super users. And then they start creating wiki pages. And then they would link to the wiki pages. And when Cart Kingdom was sunsetting, I mean, these kids were also like little hackers. I love them to death. They were going into our system and extrapolating all the original source art and trying to grab as much code as they could, because they wanted to make their own version of Cart Kingdom, so that when, Cart Kingdom was sunsetted, they would still have it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And just like how insane that was. To then just recently, Chris, who's also a painter, having a gallery show downtown. Unfortunately, I didn't make it for that event, but a super user found out that we were going to all be there, and on a whim showed up and introduced like herself to everyone. And everyone that happened to be there that was a part of Cart Kingdom at that time said it was like the most touching thing that had ever happened, because we've got face-to-face time. It's gone from this virtual abstract text in a comment section to now we're meeting the people that like that they interacted with our content on a daily basis, and evidently still like those groups are still chatting with one another, which that's even more mind-blowing. I mean, we sunsetted that like 5 years ago, maybe 7. Please understand, my understanding of space and time is a little loose.
I
Comes with
understand.
ADD.
Yeah,
Um,
I understand
It
but
also comes with age.
that. Yeah.
I've always just blamed on ADD, but fair enough.
Well, you brought up an interesting thing. So one of the things we talk about in part of our onboarding program at Liberty is, about being able to observe your users and what they're doing with the software as opposed to asking them, because, a lot of times an adult, they can articulate and they'll say, oh yeah, I definitely want that. And there's a long story that Aaron and I probably both know from our former employer that we wasted a lot of money building a feature that we thought, we say, hey, would you like to have this feature? Oh, absolutely. We would love to have this. We spent, a lot of time and effort building something, and it turned out only one person ever used it. So I would imagine, because of the nature of your audience, children probably aren't able to articulate things as well. If you're dealing with a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, whatever, you probably have come up with some techniques of observing them. Is it, speak to that a little bit? Is there anything there?
I can speak to that, but I can also speak to building projects that people requested but never used. But going back into like looking at it as far as techniques go, oftentimes when we're dealing with interactive content, especially interactive content that has such a powerful draw. I mean, Daniel Tiger being, let's just put it, he's the elephant in the room. He is the magnet as far as like we're concerned. So when we build new features, but we don't want children to get lost down the rabbit hole of, a game that they know and love and play on a daily basis. We've now started building, originally we were doing just paper testing, and that worked pretty well because they can't obviously click and link and go into the game. And we can get a little bit more reactive feedback that's not necessarily distracted. But now we've also started creating, using Figma and Figma prototyping, fake games. So it looks like brand new games that they've never seen before, but we'll give them like snail race. We actively try to like make it sound maybe not so fun, but still make it look pretty. It's a lot of them are also inside jokes for us, but it allows the child to stay more on focus onto what we're trying to get them, the direction that we're trying to take them in. Look at this feature graphic, not necessarily all the other feature graphics that are around it that they may know and love. Now, going back to programs that we've built and things that we've made that may or may that were like either ahead of their time, or although they said they wanted them, they didn't actually use. We used to have a product called Parent Vision. It was like Supervision or something like that. And the whole idea was it was this whole back end to the website that parents could interface and interact with. And at that point in time, we still had a login for kids that we've since gotten rid of. But it would allow you to identify yourself as a parent and tie it to a child. And then you could create time limits and customize time limits, time to go to bed, time for dinner, time for whatever it may be. And it was a mobile app, if I remember correctly. And so you could have your child be playing on the PBS app, on the website, wherever it was. As long as they were signed in and you went up 5 minutes to dinner, you could set the timer, and then the whole site would just lock up. Put up a screen, time for dinner, time to go to bed, whatever it was, and whoops. And we had all sorts of analytical data that we wanted to build it out. So it was like a child could be playing a game, and if the child got stuck on that game, we could feed them or give them learning lessons for the parents to then turn around and give to the child to help them get beyond a point. If it was like maybe they're having a hard time with their times tables, let's say, not really something that PBS kids would do, but times tables. And we could say, oh, your little Billy is having a hard time with his eights. Here's something that might help him step up into that matrix of success. That what we found out was that although parents clamored for it at the time, they were too busy. And at the time, I didn't get it. I wasn't a parent yet. When I became a parent, all of a sudden, all of that research made so much more sense. And that's a whole other interesting aspect of it, is like there's the building for a user group that you don't actually know. And then once you become a part of that user group and realizing how much of those tie in, and you're like, oh, you get so much more empathy for like, why didn't you want to use this product? Oh, because you have no sleep and you only have 5 minutes to maybe check the news because the news right now is scary and I can't play the news in front of my child. I mean, how wild is that? You know, so it's a lot of what I've learned is that going back to being humble, be empathetic, and try to think way beyond yourself and try to put yourself into like their testing shoes. And also realize that there are going to be some kids that will roll into a test and it's just not their day. You know, you can't take that personally. And it goes back into that, you know, never work with, you know, animals or kids. Man, some of them are going to be sweet, warm, and wonderful and tell you more information than you've ever needed to know. And then there's going to be, you know, little Billy. I'm going to pick on little Billy today. But little Billy's just going to tell you everything is horrible. Maybe he had too much sugar before he came. Maybe he was sugar lowing. He hasn't been fed yet. You don't know where they're coming from. They might have been gone to this user testing instead of going to the soccer game that they wanted to go to. You know, who knows? So smile and nod and work out the averages.
It just came from the store and he couldn't get the Hot Wheels that he wanted.
Right.
So now he's pouting. Yep,
Yeah.
I've been there. Why don't we go ahead and move into our lightning round?
Okay.
It's time for the lightning round. Rapid fire, don't slow down. Answer quick and make it count. In this game, there's no way out. It's time for the lightning round.
As you may know, every episode we do a lightning round. We'll ask you a series of questions. These are not technical in nature. Some might be slightly, but not meant to be long drawn out answers, just whatever pops into your mind. And we will rapid fire these. Each of us will ask you 5 different questions. Are you ready for the lightning round, Mr. Ocean?
I am as ready as I can be. Let's go.
All right. James, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Do you know how to salsa dance?
No.
Invisibility or super strength?
I'm going to go with super strength. It'd be really weird not to be seen anymore.
I've grown used to it.
It started back in high school.
My theme song is Mr. Cellophane from Chicago. It's like,
That's a trip, man. All right, so how many redheads are you friends with? And you'll realize why that's a funny question.
7?
7. We would have also accepted 8 or 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
what's the most boring thing ever besides this podcast?
Wow.
The most boring thing ever. You know, waiting for paint to dry. And as a painter, that's a real thing.
Since you're a sound guy, what sound does a seal make?
It's more of a bark than like
Okay.
a cry. And it also depends on which seal you're talking about. But I'm going to go with bark.
I was going to say Kissed by a Rose. That's the sound that it's
Oh!
Well done.
so
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, dad jokes of plenty. Oh, well played.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
What is your favorite martial art?
To do or to watch? Okay,
Whichever one you
Kung
choose.
Fu is the most beautiful to watch. I want to say it's Wushu, but I'm not sure. But then as far as doing, I was raised doing Taekwondo, so I had been doing that for, I think, 16 years before I quit.
All right. What is the lamest, and I'm going to do air quotes here, dessert that people try to pass off as a dessert that you don't feel is qualified?
This is highly controversial. I apologize.
Oh, that isn't
Chocolate.
good.
So
Okay.
I've got an interesting thing, flavor profile wise. I can eat a little bit of chocolate and it's okay. It's delicious. I like it. But I can't eat like a full like Twix. So it's like, how there are 2 bars? I have to give one away every time. Because by the time I get to that second one, it actually has a taste a bit like coffee and dirt all at the same time. And I just lose it. I'm just like, meh, I'm done. Which is fabulous for everyone else in my house because
Yeah.
I want all the sugary treats and they want all the chocolate. So, hey, it works.
You're like the best Twix friend ever.
When they started
share.
making the one-on-one, the little guys,
Yeah.
I was in heaven. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like the perfect amount. I could pop one and be like, done.
You can stock up. Halloween's coming up. They give those out. The little the
Yeah.
2-inch long ones. Those are good.
Now they're green.
So, are you a right or a left guy?
Oh, right Twix or
Right.
left Twix?
Yes.
Totally right.
But yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. That
We
was
would have
not
also
my lightning.
accepted left.
Yeah, that wasn't my lightning round question. That was just a follow on because I was interested.
Oh, really good.
So you didn't burn your question there. Is what
No,
you're saying.
I did not burn my question on that one.
Okay, go for another one.
Define the word Zeitgeist.
I believe it's Zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist.
I believe that's right.
I like Zeitgeist. I
I
don't know. Obviously, I don't know the definition of the word.
I was
so
going
I'm
to
not
say
gonna be able to
German in
fact check.
origin. It sounds like a really expensive synth made by someone who knows something about apothecary and may have some sort of a hammer that triggers the sound. That's going to be my guess. I know that there's a real meaning. I have no idea what it is.
You just made it up. I love that.
Yeah, why not?
I like that synth sound. Yeah.
If there was a hair in your soup at a restaurant, would you return it?
No. It's probably my own. It's probably my beard.
All right. Since we were talking about chocolate, dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Milk chocolate, Cadbury in particular, preferably imported from England. I do not prefer the Canadian brand that they attempted to spin off, and then Hershey bought that. And so, yeah, no, it doesn't taste right. Cadbury all the way.
Do you have any Grey Poupon?
No, but I do like mustard. I will mustard over ketchup any day.
Amen. Yeah. Preach. Scale of 1 to 10. How good are you at wiffle ball?
2?
2. Okay.
Yeah.
Not going to the pros, I'm guessing.
Oh, no. I wear glasses. Depth perception, not my bag.
You get a lot of action on a wiffle ball too. A lot of breaking stuff coming at you. Yeah.
Especially if you know how to pitch it. Yeah,
Yeah.
like if you know how to throw.
You know how to grab those
good wiffle
holes
ball,
just right.
Oh man, you could make that thing dance.
Are we at 5 apiece yet?
I think we are. I think that was it. So I definitely burned my 5+1 questions out of that. So I want to say thank you to our guest, Ocean Eiler.
Wait. If we're going to outro. No. Hold times. Here's the reason. Because if we're doing lightning round, you get 2 yourself.
Oh.
All right, so James.
Yeah.
Here's the question. I'm going to start with you. Domestic or craft beer?
I don't drink any longer. I met my quota at 35. So, but
Congratulations.
I do drink non-alcoholic beers.
Okay.
I probably would have to go craft. I probably would have, because I enjoy a good flavored beer. I'm not like if I were to drink beer again, I wouldn't be just like pounding Bud Lights or something. I actually do enjoy the flavor of beer.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, because those are milestones. So good on you.
Meeting my quota. That was
for recognizing that meeting your quota. I mean, that's that could be a podcast in itself.
Yeah.
All right, Aaron. All right. What is the top 80s pick in your playlist?
Oh boy, that's a big playlist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with Panama. Classic VH 1984 album,
Okay.
which I
With the
do
angel
have on
smoking
vinyl.
cigarettes on the cover. I love
Yeah.
that.
I was
Yes.
gonna
Actually,
say.
I've got the album right here, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. All right, James, one more for you.
Okay.
One for both of you, but going back to James. Now, I've definitely thought about this one. Which, if you had to choose one video game system to play from now until the end, which system would it be? Not a game, but the actual system.
System. Let's see. I don't know. I have a hard time coming up with something other than like the PS5. I think I probably spent like the most time on like the Super Nintendo though. So I probably would have to go old school and just say I could probably jam on some of the old games for forever and ever and be fine.
All right. Aaron, what is the BMX brand that you are most nostalgic for?
The Kuwahara.
Nice. Now I'm going to break into a sweat.
That's a quick answer.
Well,
That's
because
impressive.
that was my wish list bike back in the day. I used to build my own bikes, and I wanted a Kuwahara so bad. It was like,
That's awesome.
yep.
The
That'd be
GT
really cool.
Performer was the one that I wanted so bad as a child.
Nice.
Yep.
Awesome.
The second one I was looking at was a Diamondback. That one I like the Diamondback too, or the Haro. So, but man, yeah, the Kuwahara. There was a pink and white Kuwahara that I remember in the window of the bike shop. I'm just like, man, I want that bike so bad.
Did you say pink and white? Was this
Oh
like
yeah,
Andre,
because it was
Andre
all about
Agassi
colors.
days?
It
I was going to
was
say, was it splatter painted?
no, it was
Okay.
a solid pink frame, white highlight lettering, and white mag wheels with white tires.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it was. Oh, I could still see it in my mind, because it was the '80s. Colors were all the thing, right? And
Yeah.
it was, and pink was it, man, and that was the bike. I ended up with a Piranha, white frame with which rims did I put on that? I think I put a few different rims on it. So but it had some type of mag wheel on it. I think I had blue mag wheels on it, and
Wow.
I think I painted the handlebars pink. So it was it was all about the show, man. It was
Flashiest trapper keeper wins.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Oh, Trapper Keeper. Great reference.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's old school.
Got to stir
All right.
that thing up.
Oh yeah. Are we ready to outro this sucker?
Yes, let's call it a
Thank
day.
you for indulging me in that, by the way.
No, that was
That was
cool.
great.
I appreciate that. You're the first guest who's done a lightning round back at us. I love it.
Yeah, it was great. All right, so wrapping things up, this has been the / where we lean into the future of IT. I want to say thank you to our guest, Ocean Eiler. Also, check out the librarian from the Annex. Give him some likes and subscribes out there. And as always, my beautiful co-host, James Carmen. I am Aaron Chesney. Stay tuned for future episodes of the / Thank you very much.